The ocean has a way of erasing things, you know? It swallows up sound, chews on metal, and flattens memory until all that's left is a dull, salty ache. That's what I learned out there, on the Eternity, a trawler that was anything but. We called her that as a joke, mostly. She was a rust bucket, a coffin waiting for a good excuse. I was 19, and the world was just a blurry line where the sky met the water. I wasn't a fisherman by trade. I was a stowaway of sorts, or maybe more accurately, a ghost haunting the deck. My name is Leo. Or was. I'd run from everything, a small town that felt like a cage, a family name that was more of a curse, and a face I hated seeing in the mirror. The crew, they were a mess of men, weathered and silent. There was Captain Elias, his face a roadmap of hard living, Finn, a young guy with a nervous tic and a fear of storms, and Silas, who never spoke, just watched the horizon with a gaze as flat as the sea itself. We were 4 souls on a ship that was slowly dying. We were 100 miles off the coast, chasing a school of tuna that was more legend than reality. The radio was just static. Our compass was a cheap, rattling thing, and the engine coughed like a dying man. I didn't care. I was chasing something, too, the horizon, the escape, the chance to become someone else entirely. That's when the storm hit. It wasn't a squall, not a friendly summer tempest. It was a beast, a monster made of wind and black water. The sky went from gray to the color of a bruise. The waves rose up like liquid mountains, and the trawler, our little rust bucket, became a toy in the hands of something ancient and furious. The engine screamed, then gave a final shuddering groan and died. We were adrift. Finn was screaming, a high, panicked sound lost in the roar of the wind. Captain Elias just gripped the wheel, his knuckles white, his eyes seeing something I couldn't. I watched as a rogue wave, a beautiful, terrible thing of white foam and dark fury, slammed into our starboard side. The sound was like a car hitting a brick wall. A splintering, tearing noise, and then the sickening lurch as we began to list. I remember watching a crate of fishing gear slide across the deck, then tumble into the churning water, disappearing in an instant. That's when the panic set in, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Silas was scrambling for the life vests. Finn had curled into a ball, weeping. Elias was still at the wheel, but I saw it in his eyes, he had given up. We were going down. The deck was slick, the rain was 1,000 tiny bullets, and I felt the cold rising up my legs as the first wave of water breached the deck. The ship was dying around us, a symphony of groaning metal and snapping wood. I scrambled for the high ground, a futile gesture, and that's when I saw it. The thing that would change everything. Under the churning water, just below the surface, something gleamed. Not a life raft. Not debris. Something, impossibly bright. The cold was a shock. It stole the air from my lungs and turned my limbs to lead. The trawler was gone, swallowed whole. The last I saw of Captain Elias was his face, pale and serene, as he let the ocean take him. Finn was gone, too, the screaming cut off. I just held on to a piece of driftwood, a fractured part of the deck, and let the current carry me. I was alone in a world of gray. No sun, no moon, just a churning expanse of water and a sky the color of old cement. And the cold. The cold was the worst part, a bone-deep ache that promised to extinguish the last flicker of life in me. But I wasn't alone. That's the funny part. Out there, in the vastness, I found him. Silas. He was clinging to a large, tangled net, his eyes closed, his face impossibly pale. I managed to pull myself to him, to grab on. We said nothing. There was nothing to say. We just drifted, two specks on an endless canvas, waiting for death. Days passed. Or maybe it was just one long day. Time loses its meaning out there. We didn't talk. We didn't even look at each other. Just clung to the net, drinking the rain that fell, a desperate, pathetic existence. And then I saw it again. The gleam. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real. A small, glowing orb, maybe the size of a fist, drifting in the water a few yards away. It pulsed with a soft, ethereal light. It wasn't electric. It was organic. I shook Silas's arm, but he didn't stir. He was barely alive. So, I let go of the net. The cold hit me with a jolt, a physical shock. I swam towards it, a lunatic on a quest for a ghost light. It was a stupid, pointless risk, but I felt a strange pull, a sense of rightness, like I was meant to find it. I reached out, my fingers aching, and closed my hand around the orb. It was smooth, like polished stone, but warm. It hummed with a low vibration that traveled up my arm and settled in my chest. And as soon as I held it, the cold receded. The ocean, which had been a hostile enemy, felt almost benevolent. I looked down into the depths, and for the first time, I could see. Not just the dark blue, but the shapes below. I saw schools of fish, a massive, ghostly shark gliding by, and then, a shape. Something large. A structure. I saw the trawler, the Eternity, resting on the seafloor, her hull split open like a melon. And there, beside her, was a city. Not a coral reef, not a geological formation. A city. With towers and archways and structures that looked impossibly ancient. It pulsed with the same light as the orb in my hand. It was beautiful and terrifying, a world not meant for us. And I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this thing I held was not just a light. It was a key. A compass to a world that shouldn't exist. The orb wasn't just a compass. It was a conduit. When I held it, I could hear them. Not with my ears, but with some part of me that had been dormant my whole life. The whispers. The voices of the men who had been swallowed by the sea. Captain Elias, his voice a resigned whisper, "The sea takes its toll, son. Always." Finn, a terrified gasp, "It's cold, so cold." And Silas, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that I had never heard before, "We're not the first. And we won't be the last." They weren't ghosts. They were echoes, impressions left on the water, on the air, and somehow, on this strange orb. I didn't tell Silas. I didn't know how to explain it. He was in and out of consciousness, his lips chapped and cracked, his eyes half closed. The orb led us to a small, uninhabited island. It was little more than a spit of sand with a few twisted palms, but to us, it was paradise. We crawled onto the beach, exhausted and broken. I kept the orb hidden in my pocket, its warmth a constant, comforting presence. We found a freshwater spring and some coconuts. We were alive. But not well. The whispers were getting louder, more insistent. They weren't just the men from the Eternity. They were others. Voices from centuries past. Sailors lost in storms, explorers seeking new lands, pirates burying treasure. They spoke of a city below, a place of power, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. They spoke of the orb, too. They called it the heart of the deep, and they said it had been waiting for someone to find it. They didn't tell me what to do with it, but they urged me to return it to its source. To the city below. Silas, when he finally had the strength to speak, didn't talk about the storm or the men we'd lost. He talked about his son, a little boy he'd never seen who was now 5 years old. "I just wanted to see him once," he rasped, his eyes filled with a desperate sadness. I knew then that Silas was dying. He had no more fight left in him. He had faced the abyss and the abyss had won. He told me about the myth of the lost city, a local legend, a fisherman's tale about a place that held the secrets of the sea. "They say it's guarded by something," he said, "something that doesn't want to be found." I didn't tell him I had already found the key. I just nodded and listened to his confession, his life distilled into a few heartbreaking sentences. I knew then that the whispers were not just the dead. They were a part of the city. A living history. And they were calling me back. I was going to have to return to the place I had barely escaped, but I wasn't going for the dead. I was going for Silas. I was going to give him a reason to live, a last-ditch effort to pull him back from the edge. Silas was too weak to go with me. I left him on the beach, propped up against a fallen log, his eyes closed. I felt like I was abandoning him, but there was no other choice. I built a makeshift raft from the bits of driftwood that had washed ashore. It was a pathetic thing, a few planks tied together with vines, but it would have to do. The whispers guided me. They told me where to paddle, how to read the currents, how to avoid the dangerous undertows. The orb glowed steadily in my hand, its light a beacon in the gray water. I felt a strange sense of calm. The sea was no longer a monster. It was an old friend, a conspirator. I found the spot. It was exactly where the orb had shown me. I could see the city again, shimmering faintly under the waves. I took a deep breath and plunged into the water. The orb's light pulsed, and I felt my lungs fill with air, but it wasn't air. It was a different kind of life. A pressureless, warm existence. It was as if I was breathing water, but it felt as natural as breathing air. The city was silent. There were no fish, no crabs, no life at all. Just the eerie, beautiful structures. The voices, the whispers, were silent now. This was the place. I swam down, 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 until my feet touched the sandy bottom. The city was made of a strange, black stone that pulsed with the same light as the orb. In the center of the city was a pedestal, a single, smooth pillar reaching up from the seafloor. I swam to it, feeling a strange reverence. This was a place of power. Of ancient secrets. I placed the orb on the pedestal. It fit perfectly, like a key in a lock. The moment it was set, the city lit up. A wave of light, a gentle, pulsing energy, washed over me. It wasn't just light. It was knowledge. I felt the weight of every lost soul, every shipwreck, every forgotten story. I understood why the sea takes its toll. It doesn't want to hurt us. It just wants us to remember. It wants us to learn. It wants us to be still. A voice, a new one, not a whisper, but a full, resonant thought, filled my head. You have returned it. The balance is restored. It wasn't a punishment. It was a thank you. I felt the weight of my own life, the regrets, the running, the self-hatred, and they all just dissolved. The city had taken the burden from me. It had shown me the truth. And in that moment, I knew I had to tell someone. I had to tell Silas. I swam back to the surface. The pressure was gone, the air felt thick and heavy in my lungs. The sun was setting, a brilliant splash of orange and purple on the horizon. I paddled back to the island, feeling lighter, different. The whispers were gone. I was just Leo again. A boy who had run away and found something he never knew he was looking for. When I reached the beach, Silas was still there, but he wasn't propped against the log anymore. He was standing, his shoulders straight, a weak but determined light in his eyes. "You were gone a long time," he said, his voice raspy but stronger. "Thought I was a goner." "I found it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. The city. The legend. It was real. He just looked at me, a flicker of disbelief, but I saw it in his eyes, the hope. "What did it give you?" he asked. "It took something from me," I said, my voice hushed. "The fear. The running." He just nodded. He didn't ask about the voices or the orb. He just looked out at the ocean, and for the first time, he looked not with fear, but with a kind of quiet acceptance. "I feel different," he said. "Like I can breathe again." And that was it. That's the gift the sea gave us. It didn't bring back the dead. It didn't give us a fortune. It gave us a second chance. Silas, a few days later, found a broken radio and managed to get a signal out. We were rescued. He went back to his family. He finally met his son. I heard from him once, a few years later. He sent me a photo of him and his boy, fishing on a small lake. He looked happy. He didn't mention the ocean, or the city, or the whispers. But I knew. We were bound by the secret, a quiet, shared understanding that the ocean holds more than just water. It holds our pasts, our secrets, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives them back to you, transformed. I stayed near the ocean, a small town on the coast, a place where I could see the water every day. I became a fisherman. A real one this time. I'm not running anymore. I'm just here. And sometimes, when the waves are just right, I swear I can hear the echoes of salt and rust, a faint hum from a city deep below, reminding me of a life that was taken, and the one that was given back.